Hi, I'm Kelly Grafton, and welcome to In the Know, a podcast where we explore what it takes to grow, lead, and thrive as a sales professional. Each episode, I'll sit down with sales experts to dive into the training, techniques, and real-world experiences that shape successful careers in sales. Whether you're just getting started or well on your journey, you'll hear practical insights and inspiring conversations to help you stay in the know. Today, I am sitting down with Bitty Balducci, who is the Assistant Professor of Marketing at Washington State University. She has a PhD in marketing from the University of Missouri, and she is published in elite marketing and computer science journals. There's a bunch. She can name those later if she'd like to. And what's really cool is she has an expertise in researching textual and acoustic analysis of sales interactions. She likes to dive into individual interactions and see what's going on and the why behind it. So what you're going to benefit from today is learning from data, from research that Bitty has done to how you can be more effective on your sales calls. So Bitty, welcome to the podcast. So glad you're here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, I know you're all the way 3 hours behind, but I'm glad this, worked out for us to get together today. I know I gave a little bit about your background, but I know you've been working with Memory Blue for a little bit now. I'd love to kind of hear how that started and what that journey's been like working with Memory Blue, and also a little bit of how you even got to where you are with doing more of the analysis of sales calls.
Sure. So I guess I'll answer your second question first because that kind of ties into everything. But I was in the same situation that a lot of your SDRs are in. So I got interested in this field of research because I was doing cold calls. I worked in sales before I joined academia, and I was just sitting there trying to figure out, what made some people say yes to meeting with me and other people said no. And I figured it had to be something about what I was saying, the textual part, the linguistics, or how I was saying it, the acoustics, that might be able to move the needle in one direction. So that interest actually spurred me to go back to academia because I wanted to get a PhD so that I could explore these things in more detail. So I have firsthand experience with what your SDRs are working with. And as far as the research itself, I came in with that focus in mind. So that is very much my focus and my interest. And when I was working at an event for Washington State University, we have a sales program, a Center for Professional Sales. And so I went to one of the events because I teach sales, and I met Carson Newman. This was back in 2023, and was just sharing with him a little bit about my research, which I kind of just explained, and so did you, Kelly. And he was like, wow, that's exactly what we do. We would love to connect. And so
Match made in heaven.
Exactly. So I started working with him in Memory Blue back in 23, and it's the rest is history.
That's awesome. So yeah, some people might recognize you because I know we've had you come in and present some of your research, and you've been able to leverage a lot of our own calls here at Memory Blue, right, in your research?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been amazing because, of course, you guys have so many calls. And what's really important in general for practitioners, and Memory Blue included, is just generalizability. So you guys have a lot of volume, but you also are calling really diverse types of customers across the country. So it's a really unique setting.
Yeah, I love it. It really is a match made in heaven. I was like, great job, Carson. I didn't know that before. So that's awesome. Very good. Well, I know today we have a specific focus because the intention, everyone, is that we're going to actually create a series leveraging Bitty's research and her expertise, so you all can be more empowered in your skill calling people, so you can be more effective, so you can leverage all of the data that Bitty has been diving into and making sure that we can uncover it and what's something that you can do to be more effective on the calls. And so we're going to have a series and potentially even, hopefully, Bitty, have you come do some more trainings for us. But we're going to just start with one because I know you have some travels coming up. So just a little cliffhanger. There will be more later. But today we're focusing specifically, and you said there's a bunch of different ways for vocal cues. There's a bunch of different vocal cues, but we're going to focus on 3 specific vocal cues today. And so what is a vocal cue, Bitty, and why is that important to understand as an SDR when we're making cold calls?
Yes. So at a very fundamental level, if you just like take a step back, when you're on a call, you're speaking to a customer, right? And that involves two things. It involves the linguistic component or what was said, and then it's vocal cues. It's also called paralinguistics. It's also called nonverbal. So there's a lot of different terminology for the same thing. But basically, the vocal cues are just the delivery. So something has to project those words out into the world, and that's what a vocal cue is. And to your point, there are literally hundreds of vocal cues that one can and does analyze, in various disciplines. But what we're going to be talking about today are three specific vocal cues for a few different reasons. First of all, they have an impact on the call conversion, which is what we mostly care about. But second to that, we want to be able to identify vocal cues that SDRs can actually alter and they can conceptually wrap their mind around. So if I tell you to adjust your harmonics to noise ratio, that's going to be a little bit over a lot of people's heads.
Yes.
If I am talking about things such as volume or speech rate, that's a little bit easier to wrap your head around. So we're going to focus on three cues because they are important in these calls, but also because they're easy to identify and update once you get the hang of it. And we're going to go over some audio clips that exemplify these cues just to really help solidify that.
Yes, and I'm excited to dive in. I know our three focuses of today when it comes to the vocal cues are volume, speech rate, and tone. And so, what you're going to be able to do leaving this podcast is understanding what is good volume, what is good speech rate, and what a good tone is to convert those meetings. And so, we're going to have a call to action at the end so you can actually be very practical in your own calls because you're going to now learn from today how to analyze your own vocal cues in those three arenas so you can increase your conversion rate. And so we're going to start with volume. So we're going to focus on volume first. And like you said, we do have a couple calls that I know you pulled. We're going to play those. But what do you mean by volume? What is volume? And what's the data behind why volume matters?
Sure, sure. So volume is really just the loudness or softness with which someone speaks. So if, you're yelling, for example, your volume is much greater. If you're whispering, it's much quieter. So that's just what volume is. If I accidentally call it intensity, that's what I mean. That's the technical term for it. So I apologize if I slip into that. But that's just how loud you're speaking. And the kind of psychological rationale behind that is that it's just diving back in and refreshing on some of the insights that I shared in a previous call, which the listeners may or may not have had a chance to hear. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. But one of the findings that I uncovered when looking at Memory Blue's own data over the course of an entire month is that SDRs who speak louder are on average more successful. And the psychological rationale behind that is, let's be real, these in many cases are very cold calls. And so having a little bit louder volume can discourage interruptions, which in many cases can be super helpful because you guys all have value to offer. What you're trying to communicate with those customers is something that could presumably help them, but they just need to be able to hear you first, right? So getting past that initial barrier is really important. So having greater volume is very helpful in these calls. So that is kind of the psychological rationale and how I identified the audio clips that you're going to show in just a second, as well as the audio clips further down the line, is I took that month of audio calls, which was over 200,000 SDR speaking turns, and I took an average across those. And what we did, we're going to show high and low of volume, for example. And I just took one standard deviation above, one standard deviation below, and I tried to find, uh, speaking terms that are similar, like they're talking about the same thing, just so that we can really compare as much as we can apples to apples. And for those of you who are statistics nerds, such as myself, that standard deviation, that's going to capture a vast majority of the calls within the entire sample. So what we're looking at is not outliers, it's very representative of the overall data that Memory Blue has.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you for describing that. And I think it's important to understand the one standard deviation. And I think the best thing we can do now is like, let's hear it. Because I think that's where we're going to be able to actually understand this a little bit more. So I'm going to pull up, let me pull up the calls. And we're going to start with, let's do high first. What do you think about high first? Let's do high. Okay. Okay. So we're going to start with the high. So here we go.
Hi, John. This is Natalie with Click. Did I catch you at a bad time right now?
Okay. I think I'm going to play it one more time.
Hi, John. This is Natalie with Click. Did I catch you at a bad time right now?
Okay. So that was the high. Let's go to the low. I'll play this one twice as well.
My name is Wency Cheney, and I'm calling you from the Winston Newman Agency. Did I happen to catch you at a bad time this morning? I'm calling you from the Winston Newman Agency. Did I happen to catch you at a bad time this morning?
Okay, so Kelly, real talk, could you tell the difference?
I could. More so, actually, more so in the low intensity.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, he's so calm is what I felt with the calm. The one that was the high one, I felt like it was almost normal. So that one was a little bit more, maybe I'm a little more tone deaf when it comes to the high volume. I feel like I'm a high volume person myself. But yes, tell us more. Like, how do we know when our volume's high or low without having the analytics? Like, what did you hear in those calls?
Yeah, so what I heard was, and first of all, that's a subtle difference. So if the listeners are like, ooh, I had to really think about that standard deviation, just to give you a sense, that's the difference between like 5 decibels above or below the mean. So it's really not that much, but it makes a big difference. So the low level that you guys heard, he did seem very calm. He was very, he was quiet, right? Whereas the other person that you heard seemed very normal to you because perhaps the SDRs are learning to be a little bit louder especially when they make that initial, communication with the customer. So I would say personally, what I heard was that there was a normal high level at that high level and then a softer level at the low level. And how do SDRs know where they are on the spectrum? I say that's kind of tough because I don't have everybody else's voice, so it's hard for me to know what is naturally loud for you. You might have a naturally loud voice. You might have a naturally soft voice. What I would say is don't worry about being too loud. In the data that I looked at when I dived into things and presented on a call earlier, there was no negative effect of speaking loud. You're not going to run into a situation where you're being too loud. Within reason, I'm sure SDRs are not going to yell at the customer or something like that. But, you can speak really loudly and not worry about it. It's speaking quiet that's going to have a negative impact. So if you know yourself and if you're someone who is like maybe a little bit introverted or maybe just a little bit softer spoken, maybe you've heard that or just know that about yourself, really work hard to project your voice. Whereas if you are someone who speaks louder naturally, keep it in mind, but still try to speak with a little bit greater volume because that's only going to help you, particularly in that beginning stage where you're trying to just get the customer's attention and get them to hear out your pitch.
Yeah, well, that's so good. And one of the things that came up when you were describing that we teach is, so we do blitz. So we like to start our day with 90 minutes of cold calling and end our day with 90 minutes of cold calling. So we call it bookending your day. And one of the good practices that we have is standing while you're calling. And that's just something that I feel like even when I do presentations, I like to stand because it helps me project better. And so that might be a practical takeaway is one, we're going to encourage you, go listen to your calls and notice your volume and, maybe have a couple people listen to your volume so you can say, get on the same page of like, yeah, this is definitely high, or maybe you're a little bit more mellow, a little bit lower. And try out standing. I know that's going to definitely help you open up. You're going to have more energy when you stand. And so naturally, you would be louder just by that body movement. And so that could be something practical that people can, if you notice you're a little bit quieter and like you said, a little more introverted, give that a go. That could be something that really enhances the volume.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea.
Well, awesome. Well, let's go into the next one. So the next one I'm excited about because I feel like we're just getting, a little bit harder for me anyway, to understand these. So we're going to go into speech rate. And so give us a little refresher on your data when it comes to speech rate.
This is just how fast or how slowly you're speaking, and it's calculated by syllables per second. The logic behind that is that some words have more syllables than others, right? So to produce the number of words in a second isn't as informative as syllables. So it's just how fast or how slow you're speaking. And one of the insights that I shared, I think it may have been last summer, was that on average, SDRs who speak slightly faster than the customer are more successful. And what's really cool, I think, about this speech rate vocal cue is that it's taking the customer into consideration. So with the volume, you don't really have to think too much about what the customer is doing or not doing, particularly in that beginning stage of the call. Loudness is going to be helpful. However, if you look at speech rate, you need to adapt based on the customer. So there's not one size that fits all. And the psychological rationale behind that is, okay, speaking quickly is good to a certain extent. So there is research that shows that speaking fast shows that you know what you're talking about and that you're credible. But if you're speaking too fast, that might lose the customer actually. And also, if you are going a lot faster than them or a lot slower than them, that's just signaling that you're not like picking up what they're putting down. Maybe they're in a hurry. Maybe they really need to speed this conversation up. Maybe they are, trying to understand and not in a rush, and you make them feel like, they're being rushed on this call. So you really want to pay attention to the customer to figure out, what they're wanting and adapt based on that. So I have 3 audio clips for this segment, and they're going to be like the SDR speaking too slow, the SDR speaking too fast. Once again, this is only relative to the customer. And then there's going to be one to like look at a match. So these clips are going to be longer because we have to hear the customer speak to know where the match or mismatch is occurring. So I'll let you kind of share your screen and take it away.
Excited to get into it. All right. Okay, so we're going to start with, I think this one is fast. So we'll start with fast.
Whitehead and Jaka, how can I help you?
Hi, I was hoping to speak with Hunt.
Yeah, so Hunt and Michelle are actually both out of the office right now. Would you want me to take a message, or can I help you somehow with case information?
There might actually be someone better I can speak with. I was just looking to have a brief conversation about case management and intake systems. Is there like an office?
I'm the only one here right now. I'm just a paralegal. So if you want, I can take a message and have Hunt call you back.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask, what does your day-to-day look like? Are you involved in that case process?
I mean, sort of, yeah. It's like opening cases, helping, input information, stuff like that.
Okay. So are you currently using a software for that?
Okay, so before you switch to the other one, want to just because these are longer, it might be helpful to debrief after, just so we don't like forget. But what were your thoughts on that? Were you able to notice the difference?
The only reason why I noticed a difference, I literally had this thought, was because we just talked about it. And so I could pick up on, so it's good that we're focusing on these things because like you said, the data matters for more success. And I did hear it. I heard the SDR's pace versus the paralegal in that example was, I felt like he could have a 10-minute conversation. You can get a lot. And you notice the SDR switched and started, going more in the prospect route with the paralegal. And so hopefully he will adjust his pace, be like, oh, this is the person I want to talk to, rather than being so, hey, get me to the person I need. So I did notice that, how the rep was a little bit faster.
I picked up on that.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, once again, it could be because I'm trained in this, but the contrast was kind of jarring. I mean, if you think about the paralegals' demeanor, and like they were not in a rush, right? And so the SDR, especially in the beginning, was like kind of talking a mile a minute, and that is not really picking up what the buyer is putting down. And so once again, you want to kind of like try as best as you can to emulate the speed with which the customer is speaking, because what kind of goes on in your mind when you're on the phone with someone and they're speaking really quickly? You're like, wow, they're just trying to get me off the phone, right?
Yeah.
When in the reality is the SDRs are trying to get information. Even if it isn't the end decision maker, you can get a lot of valuable information from people. And so you want them to open up. And if they're speaking slowly, by all means, like, take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I'm excited to get into the too slow for the prospect, because I feel like that happens to more on my side because I'm more of a let's get to it. But I can totally see what you're talking about, of take advantage of those opportunities when you do get them, of someone who's willing to even just, talk about their day, build rapport. Who knows what kind of favors they will do for you if you slow down with this person who slowed down and start building rapport and building a relationship, and more can come out of it than not if you're just trying to rush them. Okay, you're not the right person, bye. So I think that's a really good point too. But okay, ready to get into the next one?
Yes, I'm ready for too slow. Yes.
Here we go. Here's too slow. Okay.
Hello, is this Will?
Yes, sir. What can I help you with?
Hi there, Will. My name is Samson Bear from Digicon. It's nice to meet you. Did I catch you at a bad time?
All the time's a bad time. What's this about, sir?
Okay, perfect. Basically, what Digicon is a managed service provider. Are you familiar with Digicon, our managed service providing?
No, sir.
Basically, we work with your team. So if you already have an IT team in place, we will do the hours or the non-core activities that they do not have.
So what do you want? What are you proposing?
I'm proposing a 5 to 10 minute conversation with my co-founder.
Need to know the product. I know this is now a cold call. I need to know what your product is, sir.
Ooh.
Yours can relate to that person on the call. But were you able to kind of notice the difference in speech rate between the two?
You know what's interesting about this one? If I were to listen to that before our conversation and really focusing on speech rate, I would have just thought the prospect was just rude, not interested. But he was asking questions. The prospect was giving him an opportunity to give a good pitch, to give some value add. But I totally see what you're talking about here. He was just like so mellow, and this guy was like, give me the things that I need to know so I know if this is worth my time or not. So he wanted to hear them, but it was just so slow. Yeah, I did hear it. I picked it up.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as if the customer is speaking slowly, like I said before, take time to like dig in. But if they are speaking quickly, they might have answered this call on a whim. They might be on their way to a meeting. And the fact that you actually got a hold of them, because as SDRs know, that's not always a given, you want to take advantage of that time. If they happen to be in a hurry, meet them where they're at. That person on the other line wanted to have the information, and the SDR was going just kind of at a snail's pace compared to the customer. So you really, really want to be cognizant, and I personally think the customer might view it as a respect thing.
Right.
Hey, I'm busy. I'm in the middle of something. Like, if you have something to sell me, tell me what it is. And that, of course, is going to vary by customer, and I'm sure by day of the week what's going on. But, so don't necessarily assume just because you've talked to one customer one time that they're always going to want to speak at a more casual pace. But you got to be really conscious about listening. What are they looking for in that moment? Because that can really help you, meet them where they're at.
Yeah. That was a good one. I like that one. I'm excited for the matching now. Let's see how this goes. All right.
Hi, can I help you?
Hi, James.
Yes.
Hi, this is just Mark with Humu. I reached out to you about a week ago, just wondering if now is a better time to chat.
Actually, right now is not messing over meeting. Damn.
Okay, no worries. Is it a better time to reach out?
Today, I'll be in meetings until 4 o'clock today.
Okay, I will try a later date this week then.
Okay, that sounds better. All right,
All
I'll
right.
leave it Thursday. Thursday might not
Okay.
be bad either. Okay?
Thursday? Okay. All right. Well, sounds good, James. Hopefully you have a great day.
All right, thank you now.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. So in that example, I don't know if the audience could tell or if you could tell, but the SDR started out a little faster and then they realized, oh, this person is speaking a little bit more slowly, and then they totally matched it. So kudos to that SDR.
I did hear that. Yeah, it started off like he kind of assumed this guy would want him to get off the phone, and he did, but it was much more. They had that back and forth, and hopefully he was able to find a time to give him a call back. But yes, I heard him adjust, which was cool because the whole point of the speech rate is it's being able to adapt. So you said earlier when we were talking about the example of the second call where it was too slow, the importance of really paying attention and listening at a deeper level to that prospect. And so it's cool to see someone do that right and say, started here, and then you were like, I'm kind of thinking of, okay, you're trying to get your information here, but then he started just broadening it up a little bit. And so, yeah, I picked up on it. Hopefully you all are picking up on this too. Like I feel like I'm learning here, Bitty, so I'm excited.
Yay!
So anything else on the speech rate before we go into tone?
I'm ready to dive into tone.
Last one, our third and final one for today when it comes to our vocal cues. So, all right. So when it comes to tone, Bitty, what is important? How can we be more successful when we pay attention to our tone on cold calls?
Yeah, so tone, which once again is just like pitch, it's like the highness or lowness of voice. It's you know, I don't know, women tend to speak with a higher pitch voice, men tend to speak with a lower pitch voice, just so people can kind of get like a sense about things. And pitch is important because it essentially is associated with a lot of communication of affect, which is really just emotion, positive, negative, neutral, stuff like that. And my research from earlier showed that having a higher level of pitch actually hurts conversion odds. And that is controlling for gender, just for anyone, I don't know, statistical minds might wonder. So I looked into that. But yeah, if you speak with a lower tone, that's more beneficial because essentially it's not that SDRs want to be expressionless and emotionless, but this is a cold call. This is a very socially distant person that you're reaching out to. Over expression of affect or emotions can backfire depending on the person. So kind of just trying to lower that pitch to kind of reduce the level of emotion involved in that conversation can be helpful. So the examples that I have today, I picked both men just to kind of like isolate that effect and looking at a similar introduction to the call. And the difference is going to be subtle, but hopefully people will be able to tell.
See if I can tell. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to start with pitch that's high.
Bonnie, this is Mike French calling from GrowPath. Am I catching you at a bad time?
All right, let's do one more time.
Bonnie, this is Mike French calling from GrowPath. Am I catching you at a bad time?
Okay. And then we're going to go to low.
Hey, Eric, this is Luke Johnson with Backbox. How are you doing today? Hey, Eric, this is Luke Johnson with Backbox. How are you doing today?
Okay, could you tell?
Okay, so definitely on the first one with the high. I could pick that, but again, without the focus on listening to tone, I don't think I normally would have picked it up. Especially on the second one, I was like, that seemed pretty, but I mean, I guess it was a little bit lower, but it was a little bit harder for me than the first one with the high pitch.
Sure. And what's important to keep in mind is that everybody can adjust their pitch, right? So my pitch is going to be higher than most men's just because of who I am. But once again, this effect that I was sharing is like controlling for gender. So I'm going to give you guys an example of how you might lower your pitch. And you want to do it within a normal range. Like, I'm never going to be like James Earl Jones. So, I'm not going to go for that. But you want it to be a low normal for you. So a normal speaking range for me, because I do have a very high pitched voice, would be something like, "Hi, this is Bitty Balducci with Memory Blue. Did I catch you at a bad time?" Versus, "Hi, this is Bitty Balducci from Memory Blue. Did I catch you at a bad time?" just lowering it a little bit. That is natural for me. It's not, my go-to level of pitch, but it's dropping it a little bit. So that can
Okay.
be helpful and play around. I encourage the SDRs to play around with their natural vocal range. You guys probably hear about singers having different octaves that they can sing in.
Yeah.
All have a breath with which we can speak in terms of our tone and our pitch, and just play around with what feels natural to you. So that's what I encourage our SDRs to do.
And just to be clear, your second pitch there was the one that would be more effective. Low normal. So just a little bit. I think I want to give it a try, Bitty.
Oh yeah, go for it. I love it.
Okay, let's see if I can do it. So I'm going to do my normal, like if I weren't focusing on this. Okay. Hi, this is Kelly Grafton. I'm calling from Memory Blue. Did I catch you at a bad time? I'm so high pitched. I already know it. Okay.
I'm totally there with you. I totally get it for sure.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. All right. Hi, this is Kelly Grafton. I'm calling from Memory Blue. Did I catch you at a bad time?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I could definitely notice it toward the beginning for sure. It kind of creeped up toward the end again, but that's totally, no, it's something that SDRs would have to kind of play with, right? And you can kind of imagine, like if it helps to imagine who you're talking to, that might help. So if you think about, talking, I don't know, to someone in power, I don't know who would you be talking to, but people tend to naturally drop their voice if they're trying to be serious. So I don't know if you could like role play with yourself, like, oh, I'm trying to be more serious right now. So if I was, saying faster speech rates tend to be more effective than slower speech rates. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to be formal. You can tap into your little journalism, person if that helps to imagine that you're on the radio or something like that. But that is a way to kind of help you shift that focus. If you're trying to get someone to take you seriously, for example, you tend to lower your voice. Whereas, higher pitched voice tends to be more friendly, things like that, which is great. And I'm not trying to tell SDRs not to be friendly, but it's just that the nature of this context is you're not friends, right? Like
I don't know you.
And so sharing that conflicting information can backfire at times.
That is so interesting. And when I encourage everyone to practice that too, because I felt that, Bitty, when I practiced the first time. I always was taught smile on the phone. Smile on the phone. And I'm already a smiley, bubbly person, so I think that's why it's like, hi, like we're friends. But you're to your point, and the data says so, we're not friends. This person's not expecting a call from you. We don't know each other. I don't know your kids. You don't know my life, right? And so we're not there yet. When I was doing the second time, when I was really focusing on the tone, which I don't normally focus on it until we're talking about your data, was less, I wouldn't say not smiley, but more focused. Obviously, I was like being really focused on it, and I would say I was less smiley. I was like, all right, let me get this down, and it was like more of a let me get this done right. And so it was interesting, like even just how I felt doing it, and how this was more natural the first one, but then the second one was like, okay, it's a skill I'm developing. How can I come across more professional, I guess?
The other piece of this is that there's a lot of research that shows that pitch communicates competence. So lower pitch specifically signals competence, which is why when you're trying to be professional and focusing, and if you want someone to take you seriously, you naturally drop your pitch. And so that's something that you notice that is very on point with what the research says. And on top of that, I have done some separate research that I haven't discussed with Memory Blue, but it's relevant here, which is you might be thinking, okay, well, if I focus on being really professional and really competent, like what if I come off as mean? Well, that's not what I'm advocating at all, because actually there really is a way to be both competent and friendly. The thing is that we're just asking with the pitch to tone down on the friendliness and ramp up the competence. And this is something that's going to be really important when you initially make contact with a customer. As all SDRs know, we would love to have a meeting scheduled the first time we contact them. We're not so lucky in many cases. A lot of times it takes multiple times of contacting them to actually get to our end result. So having that competence built up in the initial part is going to be really important, because we need them to know that we know what we're talking about. But as the interactions continue and they know that you're competent, it's going to be less important to like really emphasize that point. It's fine to, be more friendly and, build, like, that's going to naturally happen with the rapport that you build over time. So keep that in mind, that this is something that's going to evolve throughout your relationship with that customer.
That makes a lot of sense when you're talking about, obviously, with a cold call, it's the first interaction you're having with someone when they pick up the phone. They're not looking for a friend. You're calling them out of the blue. They're not like, oh, yay, let's be best friends. They are looking for, hey, do you have value to add to me? Kind of like that last call where the guy was like, hey, just tell me why you're calling. Because there's obviously gaps in in his work. And so if you can fill it, but just let me know what that is. And he wanted the answer. And so it's just a good perspective, and it makes a lot of sense that the data says that, because these are people that we're calling for a reason, and providing that competency and that professionalism is what's going to have them, okay, let me listen, let me hear what they have to say. And obviously what the content is important too. But it makes a lot of sense when you break it down. Just haven't naturally thought about this, Bitty, but it's making sense. It's making sense.
Glad to hear it. What do we say? What do you say we listen to a full call and we can put all the pieces together and kind of debrief? I will note to the audience that I randomly picked this call, and it happens to like directly touch on one of the cues. So I was like, wow, uncanny. So let's take a listen. Okay.
Hello?
Hey, is this Ben?
Yeah.
Hey Ben, this is Baylor with Quantified AI. Did I catch you at a bad time?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason I was reaching out, so we at Quantified, we provide an objective and accurate measurement of what prospects think and feel about sellers using artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I want to see if you all were currently using tools that evaluate the effectiveness of sales conversations.
Sorry, you're talking a little bit fast. You wanted to find out is what?
So we are basically an AI-based conversation platform. So it can help you evaluate the effectiveness of pitches or how well reps are doing in certain areas, things that are typically like unquantifiable, like likability or engagement or trustworthiness. And I was reaching out to you. I choose the VP of Sales at Qualtrics, and I want to see if you guys were currently using any tools to do that.
I'm not, but I'm just a really small group within Qualtrics. We acquired a company called Bridge that does something similar. So I'm guessing the broader company wouldn't be interested in paying for analysis of our calls.
Oh, okay, so are they basically, I guess I'm unexperienced with Bridge. Are they, I guess, an AI service as well?
Yeah, so they use AI to analyze phone calls, pull information from it, unstructured data for feedback and coaching and other things.
Okay, totally understand you there. Well, thanks for talking to me anyways today, Ben.
Yep, have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Okay, so I have some thoughts, but I would love to hear from you, Kelly. What did you notice based on what we talked about today?
Okay, so I really actually heard her slow down a little bit and adapt a bit on her speech rate. So she was fast, he called her out, and I felt her really intentionally slow down, although it was still faster than his speech rate. So I picked up on that. And I felt like her tone was actually pretty good, like low normal. I'm curious of your thoughts on that, if I'm off base there. And then going back to the first vocal cue we talked about with volume, it felt like she had a pretty good volume It was louder than his, but it wasn't over the top. So I felt like she did good there. So that would be, how'd I do, Bitty, on my analysis?
I love your analysis. It was great. Yeah, and I think you're really spot on to point out that she did adapt when called out. I think it would have been ideal to like reduce speech rate further because the buyer was speaking way slower than her still. So I think that pivoting a little bit more would have been helpful. I totally agree. I think the volume, she did a phenomenal job. It was loud, but not like in your face, whoa. She did a great job there. I think with pitch, I would have said I think she could be a little bit lower, a little bit low normal. Like it seemed like she was a little bit more at her higher or natural range, and she could have maybe lowered it a little bit further. But those are my main comments based on the cues that we have today. So hopefully in listening to that call, SDRs and others can just really think about what that might mean for them. And so I encourage you all SDRs to listen to your calls with this lens. And if you're sitting there thinking like, wow, I've never thought about vocal cues this much in my entire life. How am I possibly going to implement all of these things? To that I say, just pick one. You know, it's nothing happens overnight. Everything will make a difference. To pick one that makes sense to you, whether that's something that you just happen to know you struggle with. For example, maybe you know you speak very quickly, or maybe you know you don't speak loud enough, or maybe just pick one that makes more conceptual sense to you. And listening to this podcast, it really clicked with you. Whatever the case, just pick one and then really focus on that. And after you've mastered that, then you can add in the other ones. Because I know it can seem a little bit overwhelming.
Yes. I think that's great advice. And yeah, take something practical away from this. This was so practical, Bitty. I appreciate it. And I'm pretty proud of myself. Listening to that last call, I was like, I can hear what you're talking about here. And it's all based on so much research that you were able to do and bring to the table. And so this isn't just like, hey, let's, hope you get better, but now you have something very practical that you can be more effective in. And just like you said, focus on one thing at a time and go listen to your calls. And one of the things that we're really excited about is we want to hear your calls. So we want to collect some of your calls of you being able to adapt. I think that's my favorite one is being able to adapt the speech rate. Is the customer speaking really fast? Are they slow? How are you able to hear and adjust? But also with the loudness, and of course that low normal that I know I need to practice that one, the low normal, when it comes to your tone. And so we want to hear from you all. So my email, kgrafton@memoryblue.com. Share your calls, and your call might be featured on our next podcast. We want to give you guys shout outs and maybe put it on How Now as well of what this looks like, because we want to hear you all put this into practice. And I know, Bitty, you want to hear that. You want to hear the results of you being able to, your research really empowering people to be more effective and successful on cold calls. So this was so fun. Thank you so much for your time today. I know you're planning a trip across the country or across the world here soon, but I'm so appreciative that you spent your Wednesday with us today. So thank you so much. And I'm so excited to keep diving into your research and making it so practical, and really sitting down with you helped me really understand what these mean. And I'm excited to go listen to more cold calls so I can even, hey, am I listening? Can I hear these things? So I'm so excited, and I appreciate your time, Bitty, so much. And thank you so much for joining the In the Know podcast.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And I really look forward to seeing you in person for our next episode.
Not wait for that. So stay tuned for that, everyone. You don't know the details yet, but you will soon. Have a good one.